Hello everyone. Today I'd like to give you a full walkthrough of the Kodak Brownie No. 2. Now, the Kodak Brownie is a very simple box camera that was originally introduced in the year 1900, with this No. 2 model following the next year in 1901. These cameras were designed primarily to bring photography to the masses. People that had never used a camera before could buy one of these and take photos very easily without much knowledge of photography. These cameras were meant to be used in a very similar way as we use, for example, cell phone cameras today. It was meant for any person that didn't know about photography to be able to take snapshots or photos of whatever they wanted to, and for it to be affordable. This particular Brownie is the No. 2 Model F, which was introduced in 1924 and produced until 1935. Now, the No. 2 Brownie uses 120 film, which, as you may know, is still available and produced today. The Brownie No. 2 is actually the very first camera ever to use 120 film. In fact, 120 film was designed specifically for the Kodak Brownie No. 2. I'll just give you a quick overview of the features here. So at front, we have a very simple single-element meniscus lens. The sharpness is actually surprisingly good in the middle. It's a bit soft in the edges, but probably a little bit better than you'd expect. This is a wide-angle lens, as this camera was meant for general photography and not necessarily portraiture. But speaking as to portraiture, there was actually an attachment available called the Kodak Diffusion Portrait Attachment No. 1. A little bit of a mouthful, but it was a very simple lens element that slipped into this ring here in front of the lens, and that allowed you to get closer to your subject. It brought the minimum focusing distance closer, so you could be able to take portraits with your Brownie. I haven't used one of those yet, but I actually am looking to buy one, and I'm curious to see the results. Here on the side, we have two viewfinders. You have one for landscape photos and one for portrait photos. Now, these are actually waist-level viewfinders. They're not ones you put your eye directly up to. You actually hold it a little bit away from your face, and you can see the image. I'll try to show you guys a little bit here. If you look through there, you might be able to see my hand moving around in that viewfinder. On the side, we have your film winder. This is your shutter release. On the front, of course, these are your two viewfinder holes. And on the top, we have two sliders for timed exposure and for your aperture settings. Right now, I'll take the front cover off for you so you can get a better look at these mechanisms. The front cover is simply pressed on, so we can just pop it right off. As you can see. And here is our viewfinder and shutter mechanism. As you can see, the viewfinders, all they are is a simple lens in the front and then a mirror. So your viewfinder images will be correct top to bottom, but they'll be backwards from left to right. As you can see, the shutter mechanism is a simple rotary shutter. I will trigger it for you now. Now, this shutter is supposed to be 1/50th of a second, but I've measured this specific one at somewhere between 1/35th and 1/40th of a second. Over time, some of these components may wear out, and the shutter speed might get a little bit slower. Now, what I'll do for you here, I'll show you the timed exposure. If you pull that slider up and you trigger the shutter, as you can see, it stays open. And this will give you a better view of the aperture plates. So right now, in the largest aperture setting, there's the middle one, and there's the smallest one. As you can see, this isn't any sort of aperture diaphragm. These are just simple pre-made cutouts, aperture plates as you might call them. Now, some sources that I've seen have said that the largest aperture is f11, the middle is f16, and the smallest is f22. But I've seen other sources cite that it is f16, f22, and f32. I'm not sure exactly which one. I base it off the first set, f11, f16, and f22. But with these cameras, it's good to use negative film and to overexpose maybe a stop or so just to be sure. Now we can go ahead and put the front cover back on. Again, it simply just pops on, and there you go. Simple as that. And of course, let me close the shutter again. Through timed exposure, you simply move the lever back to the other side and that'll close it. On the top, this is where a small leather carrying strap would go. I do actually have the original strap, but it is torn, so I leave it off the camera so it doesn't get damaged. Now, part of the improvements for this particular number 2 Model F that was introduced in 1924 were that it was now made of aluminum instead of cardboard. Believe it or not, the older ones were actually made out of a thick cardstock. The other improvement made to the Model F was that 2 tripod holes were added. Tripod threads, one for landscape and one for portrait. And these are still the standard 1/4-20 tripod threads, so even a tripod you might have lying around your house today, you could use with this camera. Again, pretty amazing that some of these standards have existed for so long. Around the back, we can see a number 2 Brownie logo, which says number 120, referring to the film that it uses. Also on the back, as you can see here, covered by a piece of electrical tape, we have a red window. Now the purpose of this window is to show you how far to advance your film between frames. There's no mechanism to index the advancement of the film between frames. So with these older cameras, what you actually do is you use the numbers that are printed on the 120's backing paper to let you know how far to advance the film. So as you wind the film, you'll see the frame number slowly come up, and then it'll show up here in this window. Now the reason this window is red is because when these cameras were used, what's called orthochromatic film was still in wide use. Orthochromatic film was not sensitive to red light, only to blue and green, and thus you could have these red windows, as red light would not affect the film at all. The black and white films we use today are called panchromatic, which are sensitive to all wavelengths of light. Of course, being that you'll most likely use panchromatic film on this camera, it's a good idea to keep this window covered by electrical tape. And it's still okay to uncover it to advance your film. What I do is just to keep it out of direct sunlight, advance my film, and then once I'm at my correct frame number, I'll just go ahead and cover it up again. And I haven't had any issues with light leaks doing it that way. The way we open the back is with this switch right here on top. All we do is move that to the side, and you want to remove the top first and slide it off. As you can see on the bottom, there's a small locating pin that fits into a hole on the back. So when you put it back on, you want to do it like this. On the back, we can see number 2 Brownie Model F with some of the patent dates. Also on the back, this is our pressure plate, so to speak. It's not quite a plate, it just holds the film at the edges. It's not a great system for keeping the film flat, but it does work well enough. Now, on to loading the film. So inside the camera, as you can see, there's almost nothing in here at all. There's an insert inside, and to pull this out, what we do is you take the winding knob, you pull this out to disengage it from the take-up spool, and then grab this insert and just pull the whole thing right out, just like this. It's almost the size of the camera itself. As you can see, it's labeled top right there. So this is our film insert. There's the take-up spool and the hole in the front for the lens. To load the film, you'll put your fresh roll of 120 film on the top here where it says top. You'll unspool it around the back of this insert and around the bottom, and you'll feed it onto your take-up spool. Make sure that it's taken up sufficiently, and then you just slide the insert right back into the camera. And then what you do now is you push this winding knob in and make sure that it is engaged all the way with your take-up spool. Make sure it is flush with the camera, and that'll let you know that you have full engagement. Now to put the back on, we just line up the hole in the back with this register pin on the camera. Make sure that it's fully seated, and then push the back onto the camera and engage this catch. You want to kind of push it down a little bit and make sure that that pin goes over top of the catch to make sure it is engaged. And as we can see, this one is. And after you close the back, what I typically like to do is run one band of electrical tape all the way around the seam of the back. And this is just in case there would be any light leaks to help avoid that. Now, I haven't shot a roll without the electrical tape, so this might actually be light tight. It is designed to be, obviously, by itself, but I just haven't wanted to take the chance. But you could try that with your own camera. Then, as I said earlier, you'll simply uncover this window, wind onto your first frame, and you're ready to shoot. This is a very simple and very rudimentary camera, and as such it's quite limiting, but because of that I actually find the challenge to be fun. And in my photography, I enjoy trying to get the best image that I can out of a rudimentary camera or a camera that isn't really meant to do what I'm asking it to do, and I find that enjoyable and fun, which is why I've enjoyed shooting with this thing so much. And I actually have shot many rolls of film through this, probably maybe 7-8 rolls of film through this since I've owned it. Surprisingly, I haven't had any trouble with light leaks whatsoever with this thing, despite its very crude design. So here are some sample photos that I've taken with this exact Brownie. I'll let them roll and you can pause if you want to take a look at them for any longer. These first ones are all black and white daylight shots. Now we get into some night photos. It's actually one of my favorite things to do with the Brownie. It's perfectly capable of taking night photos as long as you have some time, a tripod, and you meter carefully. This one's one of my favorites. Now we get into some color film. This is Ektar 100. The Brownie can actually take some surprisingly decent color photos. Now here we get into slide film. I tried one roll of Fuji Velvia, and they didn't turn out very well because slide film has quite a bit less exposure latitude than negative film, so definitely recommend only shooting negative film in this camera. These last two I just recently took in a photography studio with professional lighting, and I think they turned out pretty well considering the camera. So I hope this video was useful, and I hope that I can help somebody that maybe found one of these cameras and would like to give it a try. Thank you for watching.